All right, in part one of the reciprocal method, we followed through this algebraic approach here and ultimately showed at the end basically how we would follow the formula here to come up with the cost to allocate. And so it really doesn't matter which department we would start with, but we'll start with Service Department 1. So from S1, what we would do is we would take these percentages that we have in this table, but then multiply those not by the 15,000, but by the cost to allocate, which would be the 18,274. And I'm going to hit the F4 key here so that when we copy this formula across, we will see that it will pick up that cost to allocate in its entirety. So what we'll have then, as you see here, is like so now we can have a subtotal. We don't have to do this, but I think sometimes it's important to see that. Well, really, we shouldn't be having, so we shouldn't be having 18,000 remaining in there. So we're going to have to do minus the sum of these cells, so that we end up with, and then summing down, so we end up with a negative 3,274, which seems a bit odd. But then we see what's been allocated to these other, the other service department, and then the two production departments. So now in the second allocation, we're going to go from S2 to the other departments, following these percentages over here. Well, now we have the augmented amount of S2 to allocate provided in this cell right here. So if we are lucky or good, we'll have this 15% of this number, and then we're going to do F4 there, and we'll see that voila, that matches this particular cell. So that if we then copy this formula over to P1 and P2, and then sum this across, we'll see that we have 21,874 allocated. Of course, that is exactly what we have in Service Department 2, the cost to allocate. And when we subtract these out, we see that we end up with our after allocation amount copying these formulas that were summing the previous two lines, so that we end up with 65,659 going to Production Department 1. Now what you'll note is that compared to the step method where we had 65,000 or the direct method of 66,274, the reciprocal method is going to give us some number that's in between the two. And actually this will be a more accurate allocation, which is why this is the approach that we ought to take. Part of the issue is that there are times that people might think that this is a bit too complex, but I think with a little bit of practice, what you'll find is that this is something that is certainly achievable, especially once we've gone through the process of having these cross service department percentages. Now, one thing you might try on your own, and I would encourage that, you could go through this approach using the algebra to find Service Department 2's allocation. It's not necessary to solve the problem, but it's just good practice to give you some more confidence in doing this. But what you should find is that you'd be able to find this would be 21,827.41. There is no difference in terms of which department you start with in terms of the allocation once you use the reciprocal method.